The ballroom sparkled like something out of a movie. Golden chandeliers hung overhead, reflecting light across polished marble floors. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved silently between tables, serving guests who spoke in low, confident tones about money, power, and influence. This was my father's world, or, at least, the world he desperately wanted to belong to. Your one click can keep these stories alive. Subscribe, because every voice deserves to be heard. Don't miss out on the journey. Subscribe, and let's grow, laugh, and learn together. Stay close, he told my brother as we entered. These events are about connections. Then he looked at me, and try not to ruin anything. I didn't respond. I was used to it. In our family, I was always the exception, the one who didn't fit, the one who didn't talk about success in ways they understood. I wore a simple black dress, no designer label, no expensive jewelry. To me, it was enough. To them, it was embarrassing. We approached a group of well-dressed guests. My father immediately started introducing himself, mentioning my brother's job in finance within seconds. "And this is my daughter," he added, gesturing toward me. A brief pause. "What do you do?" one of the men asked politely. Before I could answer, my father laughed. "She's still figuring life out." My brother smirked. "She tries different things." The group gave polite smiles. Translation, not important. The conversation moved on. Because in rooms like this, if you didn't impress quickly, you disappeared. Later, as we walked toward our table, my father leaned toward another guest and spoke just loud enough for me to hear. "Some people just don't have what it takes," he said. He nodded in my direction. "No drive. No direction." The man shifted uncomfortably. "That's unfortunate." My brother added with a chuckle, "She's basically useless." My father shook his head. "Worse," he said quietly. Then, with a dismissive tone, "Worthless trash." The words landed heavier than usual, not because they were new, but because of where we were, surrounded by strangers, by people who now saw me exactly the way my family described me. I didn't react, didn't argue, didn't defend myself, because explaining had never worked. Years ago, I tried to tell them about the hotels I was managing, the properties I was helping rebuild, the partnerships I was forming. But every conversation ended the same way. "That's just service work. You're not building anything real." So eventually, I stopped explaining. We reached our table near the center of the ballroom. A good spot. Visible. Important. Exactly what my father wanted. Dinner began shortly after. Course after course. The room filled with conversations about investments, acquisitions, and global expansion. My father joined eagerly. My brother followed. I stayed quiet. Across the room, I noticed something familiar. Several executives from my company were seated near the stage. They hadn't seen me yet. That was fine. I preferred it that way. For years, I had built everything quietly, acquired properties through holding companies, expanded across cities, reinvested profits, let others take public credit. It made life easier, especially with family. Halfway through dinner, my father leaned back again. "You know," he said, addressing the table, "events like this separate people." He glanced at me. "Those who belong." A small pause. "And those who don't." My brother laughed softly. "Guess we know which category she's in." Light laughter followed. I picked up my glass calmly, because moments like this didn't affect me anymore. Not after everything I had built. The lights dimmed slightly as the main program began. A well-known hotel group CEO walked onto the stage. The room quieted instantly. My father leaned toward my brother. "This is real success," he whispered. The CEO began speaking. Growth, expansion, luxury markets, everything my father admired. Then, halfway through his speech, He paused. His eyes scanned the room. Then he smiled. Well, he said into the microphone, I didn't expect to see her sitting out there tonight. The room stirred. People turned, trying to see who he meant. My father frowned. Who is he talking about? The CEO stepped forward slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, he continued, I'd like to recognize someone very important to our organization. My brother leaned in, probably an investor. Then the CEO raised his hand and pointed directly at our table, at me. My father's face changed instantly. That's not possible, he muttered. But then the CEO said something that made the entire room fall silent. She's not just a guest. He looked straight at me. She's the one who owns the hotel. The ballroom went completely still. My father blinked rapidly. The owner, he whispered. The CEO kept his gaze on me. Would you mind joining me on stage? Whispers spread instantly across the room. My brother turned toward me, his confidence gone. You, he said. I stood up calmly. Chairs shifted as guests made space, their attention now fully on me. The same people who had ignored me minutes ago were now watching every step. As I walked toward the stage, I could hear the murmurs growing. That's her? No way. She owns this place. The CEO greeted me with a respectful handshake. Good to see you, he said. You too, I replied. He turned back to the audience. For those who don't know, he began. This is the primary owner behind this property and several others in our group. A wave of shock moved through the ballroom. At my table, my father hadn't moved. My brother leaned forward, staring. The CEO continued. She acquired controlling interest years ago and led the expansion that made this hotel one of the top luxury destinations in the region. More whispers, more stunned faces. Then he added calmly, she prefers to remain private. A few executives nodded. That explained why most people didn't recognize me. Then the CEO looked toward my table. I believe her family is here tonight. My father stiffened. The CEO gave a small smile. You should be very proud. No one spoke, because just minutes earlier, the applause filled the room. Loud, respectful, real. I stood beside the CEO, then stepped forward as he handed me the microphone. The room went quiet again. I won't take long, I said calmly. I just want to say something simple. I paused briefly. Value isn't always visible. A few people nodded, and sometimes my eyes moved toward my table. The people you dismiss. Silence are the ones building everything behind the scenes. Soft applause followed. I handed the microphone back and stepped down from the stage. Then I walked back toward my table, where everything had already changed. I reached the table. No one spoke. My father looked up slowly, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard. You own this place? He asked. Yes, I replied. My brother stared at the floor. All this time, I pulled out my chair and sat down. You called me worthless, I said calmly. No one denied it. I glanced around the ballroom, the same place where I had been invisible just minutes ago. I just didn't need to prove anything, I added. Silence followed, because the truth was finally clear. The person they dismissed as nothing was the one who owned everything around them. They had called me worthless trash.